So we have already 9 a.m. in Warsaw. So we would like to start our business breakfast. So good morning and welcome to our next digital business breakfast. My name is Maciej Meder and I'm Managing Director of ZTB in Poland. And I have a pleasure to moderate today's meeting. We would like today to discuss a highly interesting topic of buy now, pay later solutions and their implications for banks. BNPL product offering is on the edge between payments and lending product, and with increasing popularity of e-commerce, BNPL experience a huge hype driven mainly by fintechs like Klarna, Afterpay or PayPal. However, banks with strong consumer finance arms are also looking into this market segment and also launch their solutions. Which types of players will win this battle and how to make BNPL activity profitable? These are one of many topics which we would like to discuss today with my colleagues and experts from ZTB. I'm very glad to welcome Nicola Jelicic from our Vienna office, who is co-head of the practice group payments. Hi, Nicola.
Hello, good morning. Happy to be here.
Filippo Piva, head of our BNPL working group within ZTB from our Milan office. Good morning, Filippo.
Good morning, everybody.
Buongiorno.
And Piotr Wojtuszko, Senior Manager in Practice Group Payments from Warsaw office.
Dzień dobry, good morning.
I'm very glad, guys, that you accepted my invitation today. Thank you also for the audience for coming today. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and it will be published in a few days on our webpage. So if you miss any part, you have to leave earlier, don't worry. I mean, the meeting will be recorded and it will be published. As always in our meetings, feel free to comment or ask questions using the chat functions. I will be looking into your questions and I will pass it to my colleagues. So let us kick off the discussion. And I think for the very beginning would be good just to start with a short introduction. What actually BNPL is? Filippo, would you be so kind to provide us some explanations and maybe differences to traditional consumer finance products?
Yes, thank you, Maciek, for the introduction. I think that buy now, pay later is already a well-known product or solution since it's a kind of hype or buzzwords in our everyday life. But just to provide you a definition. So we define buy now, pay later a payment methods that allows you to pay in installments or deferment. I think that maybe to understand this, it would be useful, maybe also interesting for you to know a little bit the story behind. I think there are two main relevant stories to tell you this morning. The first one is about deferred payment. I guess you remember something like 8-10 years ago when these online shops arise for garments clothes mainly. And usually buyers were purchasing more than one piece of garment, maybe different colors, different sizes. They tried it at home and sent it back. At the very beginning, they had to pay the full purchases and then they had a refund. That's why there was a need, basically, from the client. That's why players like Klarna entered this business exactly answering that need. How to reduce the burden for the client. So they just had the possibility to pay by Klarna. So basically they paid 14 days later when this process was already over. So they tried the clothes at home. They sent back what they didn't fit because were maybe after Christmas, they gained some sizes, and they paid just for what they hold. And this is the first story. So the first story is interesting because you understand that this product answers some needs. And this is the first need, which is the second need. And this is a story, let's say, from the other side of the world, so the down under, Australia and New Zealand, where I would say this product mainly was born. there the need was different. Mainly millennials or young generation were not too well accepted, let's say, by traditional banks. They were some kind of, not really underbanked, but kind of subprime. And I think it's useful to, for instance, to learn that in Australia and New Zealand especially, salaries and even house rents are paid on a weekly basis. Okay, so imagine in their mentality, in their way of living, they pay on a weekly basis and they get money on the weekly basis. So they didn't have really a payment means, and that's why buy now, pay later helped them achieving the possibility to buy products in a kind of deferred payment. So we come to our definition, okay? So with buy now, pay later, you really buy now and pay later with no cost, because the cost, and then we will talk, and Nicola will explain something about it, but the merchant pays. So, and then we come why for the merchant this product is interesting, because, and it's proven, sorry, we obviously made some assessment and interviews even with merchants, big merchants, and they told me, Filippo, yes, maybe the 40-50% that is declared by these buy now, pay later players is a little bit too much. When I'm talking about 40-50%, I'm talking about the increase on sales, both on the amount, but also cart conversion. You know, that one of the main problems of the e-retailers is that many garments are set in the cart, but the cart doesn't, ends up with a purchase, you know. So, you know, reducing the amount that the client has to pay at the very beginning, it helped them to spend more and spend faster. Okay, so that's why merchants are somehow interested in providing this solution to their clients. Just to give you a little bit more insights about this product, I think it's interesting to look at Google Trends. I guess you know it, but Google Trends, for those that don't know it, is a Google tool, free of use, and you have the evidence, the return of how many entries, queries were done by clients in a given time frame and in a given area. So here, this query was done just a few days ago. You can see 26th of February, so really 4 or 5 days ago. And I enter buy now, pay later. And you can see over, let's say, 1 year, roughly, how this query was entered. So it almost doubled in a matter of 1 year. What's interesting here is about the geography. It's really a global phenomenon. And I think what is also interesting, maybe you don't see from this data, but I tell you, because Google Trends also returns, you know, what are the other keywords enter beside buy now, pay later. And main entries are related to the provider. So buy now, pay later providers are becoming a brand. So this is important. So clients are looking for a specific brand, a specific provider, not just the service as such, but also specific providers. Obviously, it's seasonal. You see a peak, let's say, around Christmas time. And maybe this is the second interesting thing that, and that's what also buy now, pay later providers told us. They told us that they are becoming a kind of getaway for end customers. So end customer really first search for those merchants that are proposing a buy now, pay later solution. So they go to their website, they check for the merchant with the buy now, pay later service available, and then they go to the merchant e-commerce site or even physical shop. And this is interesting because I think that you see that how it changes, you know, how people purchase their goods. And so I think that, let's say, in the midterm, it might become also a slight change of, it might become a change of business model for these buy now, pay later players, not just a provider of a payment means, but rather a getaway, so a hub, an aggregator of merchants, because they really drive business to them. And that's also interesting. And please, Maciek, please keep the time, because I'm keep talking. And
Sure.
so stop me or mute me when my time is over.
Don't
But
worry,
it's very
Filippo.
interesting how these buy now, pay later players, grow their business. Because you have to know that, as we said in the previous page, the fee is paid by the merchant. Okay, so if the buy now, pay later provider doesn't have an agreement with the merchant, basically they gain no money. But obviously they have an interest to gain more merchants. So what they used to do in this kind of second phase of the buy now, pay later development is to allow clients to pay in installments, even at those merchants that do not provide their service. And then after maybe 2, 3, 4 months, they go to that merchant, they show how many clients really went to them going through their website, because they have the statistics, and then they provide the service to the merchant. So you understand that this business model and this product is evolving over time.
Filippo, maybe before I pass to Nicola, if you could comment a bit on the profile of the clients. I mean, because we talked that I would say a lot of them are Googling this. I mean, do you see any specifics of this BNPL target group comparing to the other clients?
Just for you to know, these data are from Australia, because I mean, as you could understand, Australia is somehow the most advanced country, along with UK and US, in this business. So I mean, let's think about this picture like Europe in a matter of 1 year, 1 year and a half. But women are doubling men's, because I guess of the purchase habits. I can confirm. I'm married, so I think I can confirm this. Also, age is not so sharply, I mean, on the millennials, but it's a kind of balance. Obviously, millennials, due to the reason that we commented before, so access to standard credit, also habits to this digital, evolution, by far are the main users. But what also interesting is that it's not just a business for low income customers, but also for, let's say, wealthier people. So it's becoming a habit also for those that can afford a full payment on the spot to use such a service. So I think that the key takeaways is that it's a global, it's growing. There is a lot of interest from clients and merchants, and it's really goes across different parts, let's say, of the population.
Okay, Filippo, thank you very much. So we see that there is interest from the client side. Merchants also like it because of the conversion. But the key question now is, what is the revenue pool for the providers of such service, and who is already in this game? Nicola, if you could please comment on your estimations on the market size in our region.
Sure. I will just try to pick up where Filippo left off, in the sense that buy now, pay later is a payment method with a credit component born out of convenience. Yeah, so it's not born from need, but rather from convenience. And if you look at this graph, you see that there is one big bubble in this right-hand side of the entire graph. That's Germany. Germany has deferred payment methods that have been established in a catalog sales business, for example, by the company Otto, for almost 70 years. And the reason is that everyone likes to pay later if they also get the goods later. So the same motivation as in online sales. And this is what makes a lot up of the BNPL share also currently. There are also other payment methods related to buy now, pay later, like split payment, or what we call pay in 3, pay in 4. And this is where the growth is coming from. And even if the share of buy now, pay later is large as it is today in Germany, this doesn't mean that there is no growth potential. So I think that's important to say. Poland, for example, is in an even better situation because, first of all, it doesn't have a huge buy now, pay later share. Second of all, it's quite an e-commerce oriented market. Maybe even the way we perceive it in the round of this webinar today, even more than the figure shows. But last but not least, what I would like to say is that we experience that there is basically room for growth, not equally, but in every market, with a good buy now, pay later offering, which treats, let's say, or which takes into consideration the starting point of the specific player, be it a merchant, be it a bank, be it a consumer banking specialist, or be it even, let's say, a newly found payment service provider by some of the online merchants. And I think that you have in Poland a particular situation with Allegro, where they are quite big in the market with their own e-shops, own payment methods, and also including then buy now, pay later recently. What does this mean for the actual wallet? So since buy now, pay later doesn't have an original, let's say, wallet to be gained, which can be clearly segregated. But what we can firmly say is that, first of all, there is a growing payment market. Nobody thinks that digital payments are not growing, because they just are. And there is, of course, with the changes in payment structures, so not only cash to card, but also card to alternative payment method. There's, of course, a redistribution of those wallets from also a banking perspective. And I think you have heard a lot about that, so I don't want to spend on it too much in general. I would rather want to bring it into the buy now, pay later context. On the other hand, also the consumer lending wallet is growing in most markets, not as fast as the payment market, but nevertheless, the wallet is growing on its own. And then at the intersection of these two, so if it weren't enough that these two circles are growing concentrically, you have at the intersect again a new product which brings the benefits of both, and basically has a huge growth potential. What we estimate is that we are currently in CEE, with Poland being half of CEE's market size. We are currently below 1 billion, significantly below 1 billion, but with a strong growth rate of almost plus 30% per annum. We will reach 1.5, even up to 2 billion in a couple of years' time. I see one of the comments already popping up, so I'm glad to get back to that maybe later. I'll read it now and then answer later if I quote the name of the product. But very happy to continue the discussion. Finally, just to complete the answer to the question, Maciek, what does this mean actually for the positioning of certain players? I mean, obviously, the buy now, pay later market is a dual market. There's this highly visible, especially for us, let's say, financial industry enthusiasts and members of the group. We look at valuations of the buy now, pay later specialists. They're extremely high, 60 times plus. From time to time, this market we can imagine is hugely hyped. Also, when we look at the profitability of those players, we know that there's so much growth behind, and that given that the profits are not yet there, it's obvious that this all may be a hype. Where we say no, probably it's not really a hype, is because it actually answers a profound need, and that's the need of embedding finance, embedding payment, embedding credit in the overall customer experience and making it a daily relevant product for the customer. And this is where we see something that's so buy now, pay later specialists are moving from the online world into the POS world. They have come from deferred and split payment and are potentially moving into the lending space with, of course, a different set of requirements to fulfill. But this is one direction of growth. The other direction of growth is where I guess most of this round is coming from, not making payments bigger, but making lending leaner to reflect this trend and to be part of the buy now, pay later growth. So if you are a consumer finance specialist, you may want to found a new brand to cover the tip of the iceberg, or you want to take your POS offering into the online world, make your lending product simpler so that it's fit for the embedded world. And last but not least, different business models. There are so many brand names here. I just want to say that when we talk about buy now, pay later in the narrow sense, we of course mean the buy now, pay later on the merchant interface. This means that you acquire a merchant, and via the merchant, you're part of their checkout process, and you have your buy now, pay later solution embedded right there. There are also other solutions on the issuing side, so with different options building on the card. You can build on the card as an issuer of the given card, so adding that revolving touch where it's not yet there. Or finally, if you have a very broad and scalable platform, you can of course offer it as white label. And I don't know, in Germany we often talk about Solaris Bank. There are also, you see here, Bread and LimePay, which have a very similar model, and maybe a supplier for one of the banks, or maybe also a benchmark for a business model to be pursued if you don't want to be part of the market directly.
Maybe, Filippo, if you would add to this point, because we spoke a lot about e-commerce. I know that when you analyzed some business models and talked to your clients in Italy, also there is a lot of hype in the, I would say, traditional brick and mortar or POS models. I mean, where do you see the growth potential? Or I mean, does it somehow depend on the country, or you see some more general trends here, Filippo?
No, I see that, as you said, Maciek, the first step was about online sales. Now the players, so the traditional fintech players, are fighting to conquer POS merchant. And here is also where the role of the bank might be a prevalence, because I mean, most of these merchants are already clients of many banks. So you, as banks, I guess, you can play a relevant role here. What we are observing is that this merchant role is key. And I think also to share with you one thought, if you look at these seedings rounds, so the financing rounds of these fintechs, and if you go through the list of the investors, many of them obviously are venture capitalists or business angels, but there are some players that are not purely investors. They are industrial investors. I mean, if I think about Tencent, if I think about Dorsey with Block investing in, the owner of Square and Cash, just to mention that. They invested heavily in also Italians buy now, pay later. Just for our record, we just had last week the first unicorn in Italy with buy now, pay later, and investor is also Square. So you understand that the relationship with the merchant is key for this business. I mean, we already discussed about the fees paid by the merchant, but also, in this environment of big data and possibility to gain traction on merchants is extremely relevant. And it is also extremely relevant, for instance, looking at the strategy of Xenia, the Santander player. I mean, the business case for them is to expand the business beyond installment, so through real consumer finance. And just also to provide you my last thought about this business at the merchant side. For instance, in the state, we're looking at a kind of second wave of buy now, pay later, where players are substituting, the previous buy now, pay later players. How they're doing it, obviously playing on fees, it's quite evident, but also playing on added value services. So providing merchant with fidelity programs, with statistics, with insights how to grow their business. So really, the business around merchant, I think, has just started. Okay, so there is where the customer experience and this customer journey starts, because really this is the point where there is the match between demand and supply, and where the financial need starts. So I think it's relevant, very relevant, to play at the merchant, being it digital merchant, be it a physical merchant. For sure, digital is easier in terms of API application. Physical POS is maybe less easy from the technical point of view. I have personal experience of companies that took 1 year, to deploy really POS machines dedicated to buy now, pay later. So it might be a longer path, but I think that banks already having some grasp on the ground with PS machines and already ongoing relationship can play a significant role in this.
Thank you, Filippo. Maybe let's catch on this thought and continue the discussion, because we have discussed that let's say the e-commerce is an important element. On the other side, also we said that this BNPL service is somehow on the edge of lending and payments, and the game which is played both on the client and merchant side is a bit broader than one single product. Piotr, if you could just comment on this topic, also given the fact that some of the big players announced the super apps, so I would say very, very comprehensive offering. What do you think, in which direction this will evolve?
Actually, we expect that BNPL will be offered as an element of wider, more comprehensive payment solution or payment ecosystem rather than a standalone solution. And we see two directions with regards to development of these ecosystems. So one direction is a consumer ecosystem, consumer payment ecosystem, and then the solutions like Klarna or PayPal, where I would say clients has offering of different type of payments, and that could be used in different channels, not only for payments, merchant payments, but also for transfer between individuals. But on the other hand side, there will be the rise of merchant ecosystems, which I believe is more interesting, because it won't be not only about the payments, like acquiring services for e-commerce, for brick and mortar channels, but also there will be a bunch of value-added services that will be offered together. We can see that the merchants, especially small and medium enterprises, are approaches with kind of packages that include not only payment products or payment solutions, but also things like merchant financing, offering to open account with the specific provider. Also some other financial products like for example, offering online leasing for B2B payments, but also we observe that it goes even beyond that. There are solutions that are offering, I would say, easy plug-in to e-commerce platforms when it's the merchant that is starting the business can relatively easily start the e-shop. There are also some solutions. There is one solution in Italy when the bank is offering even marketplace in a kind of Amazon, when the merchants do not need to create own shop, but they can use the platform to to sell own products, and the entity is also providing fulfillment services.
But would this mean that the providers of, I would say, single product are rather doomed to extinction, and rather believe in a more comprehensive offering to the clients? What is?
I would say there will be twofold, I would say, development. I think that one will be to create such a comprehensive offer, but also I would say, if we speak about the acquiring services, we'll see that some of the acquirers now maybe do not have competences, I would say, to offer products that are going beyond payments, processing payments. So they might be looking for the cooperation with banks. They can offer a BNPL solution as a extension of the other payment methods.
So on one hand, the payment providers are adding more lending function. On the other, I'll say the typical consumer finance specialists are adding the payment.
Or reaching for payments, yes.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Maybe, Nikolai, if we could discuss the topic of success factors, because we said that in general this is a rather comprehensive offering, which has the future. So basically, really combination of this payment and the lending word. And the question is, what we have learned from the project so far. I mean, what is, let's say, your view on this topic? And secondly, I mean, on some markets we already observe, I would say, some regulatory concerns regarding this product. Clients who are taking the loans not really being aware that they took a loan. Do you also expect maybe some developments in this respect?
Yes. I mean, I just want to also follow up on what Piotr said. There are so many ways to play within this buy now, pay later market, and you can think it as big as you like in terms of, super app for the consumer, or providing a full range of merchant solutions in a merchant ecosystem. And maybe just to simplify it at this point in the presentation, I would just say the important thing in the end, and this is what you will probably be asked about when you sit down in your working environments and have to make decisions on whether and how to enter the market, is how to make money in this market. And the good thing is that, you know, the wallet is obviously growing. So if you find the right focus, or we sometimes say the right sweet spot from your perspective, then this should be within reach. And when we say within reach, according to our project experience, also we are talking about ramp-ups of a couple of months, of course, subject to implementation efforts or choice of platform that you need to do in the first place. But if you play the game on the merchant side, of course, this is the essence of buy now, pay later. The merchant pays the fees, and that's how you earn the money. You can also charge for the cash advances to merchants, and this is very much the small upsell potential that you have directly from the buy now, pay later game. In addition, of course, you have indirect, let's say, at least from buy now, pay later perspective, indirect monetization possibilities, providing all those value-added services of the merchant ecosystem. On the consumer side, if there is a late payment, of course, you can earn from that. You can also extend or turn a closed-end product into more of a revolving product. And buy now, pay later is typically closed-end, and thereby also generate an interest income on the consumer side. And of course, if you think of really refinancing, then or upselling really the buy now, pay later original product, you can extend the credit line and also offer a digital bank account with all the products around that as part of your overall monetization strategy. If you look at the bottom line of some of the, at least the ones that we had insight to, some of the buy now pay later fintech specialists, not all of them are making money directly, and for some of at least our clients or the clients that I personally talk to, this is like also a warning sign. So is this really a market which is that promising, or is it only for those guys that don't need to worry about profit and don't need to worry about potential risk costs once it comes around, because they're limiting themselves to this product? This is where we believe that buy now pay later is basically your lead generation machine. It's your way to new customer, and thereby also the title of the webinar, Gateway to New Clients. It's a door opener towards new customer acquisition, and you can access a whole new pool of new to bank customers in the online world that you wouldn't be able to acquire in your direct channels. And that's where you can use the merchants, and then you can of course switch from playing on the merchant side to playing on the consumer side, and try to upsell either. Yeah. To touch upon those success factors and the regulatory topic, we try to outline the starting point of the bank here along the customer journey. And of course, one of the key assets of the bank versus a fintech is the experience in dealing with consumer credit. And even if it's not a hard requirement in certain countries to ask for a credit bureau statement when extending the buy now pay later offer, this is an option, and plus you have the possibility, of course, to simulate something similar as kind of an alternative scoring, and thereby you are much more aware of the risk as a bank of dealing with certain merchants. In addition, you of course have probably a better possibility out of your consumer lending space to onboard the customer. You have POS assets that you can deploy. Even if you don't at present, we also saw customers who went for a smart POS rollout, a faster rollout, in order to enable buy now pay later solution at the point of sale. This example is from Italy, so Filippo, thanks for sharing that one. I just like to quote it because I think it's very much relevant, because you as a bank, you don't want to limit yourself only to a single customer group, namely the e-commerce only players. And where does the regulatory story then start? So let's say the final note on that. We look to Australia, where the industry is looking for some self-regulation in order to manage their reputation risk. In fact, because nobody wants to be perceived as the unfair, immoral lender, let's put it like that, and banks the least. In the UK, we have what we see is still a development towards looking at how does consumer protection and payment regulation fit to this new space. We have some announcements from the European Commission, but nothing in place yet. So it is a window of opportunity now also for banks to play this game without a substantial regulatory burden. And if it's played responsibly, there is still a possibility to enter the market and basically earn the extra wallet coming out of that growth. So as a summary, you can play the game on the consumer side, coming from your role as issuer, coming from your own customer base. You can design products coming from your card space. You can focus on the lending solutions and try to build them down so that they are fit for the more embedded banking world. And this would be a very evolutionary approach, is very much followed by many of our customers. Even though cards, as we say here, are not a margin paradise, there is still an extra wallet there to be addressed. On the merchant side, it's more offensive. Of course, it's more, you know, this new customer acquisition driven approach to the market, and this is the one that we, let's say, like to opt for, because obviously we in consulting like to be part of the growth stories of our customers and the successes that you will talk about in future and that will be talked about for many years. And here we are also seeing many different ways to play, from product-wise factoring model, backed by account-based payments, backed by alternative payments, so avoiding also some of the credit card fee burdens. And last but not least, it opens the door to a fully complementary business. And what I sometimes perceive with some customers is, or some of our banking clients, is that there is this discussion: are we now cannibalizing our own income? Via merchant, it's a safer game, because it really adds to your existing business, and in most cases, of course. And last but not least, and this is really my final note, it takes a look at your corporate clients from a completely different perspective. Basically, you put the magnifying glass on your corporate clients, looking at how many of them actually have a need for an acceptance business, and then you build around that with the buy now, pay later solution, and you access the consumer client base via the merchant, which is the, let's say, dream of buy now, pay later growth for, I believe, any bank.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nicola. I would like to come back to Filippo, because I had one side thought when we discuss it now, when you mentioned also factoring model and I would say regulatory stuff, because I think one of the observations which we have is, first of all, that BNPL is not always, I would say, the same BNPL on every market. I would say from the product perspective, but also from the regulatory or from the legal setup. Yeah, it's also different. Yeah, in Poland we know it's rather as a consumer loan construct. In Germany, for instance, rather factoring based. I don't know how it's run in Italy, Filippo. But the question is, do we see here really a pan-European approach possible? Because we have some players which are trying to do it on multiple markets, or, I mean, because of these regulatory differences, this will be very much driven locally.
No, so far, as Nicola already said, it is basically not regulated. So all these fintechs are not financial institution at all. So they are a tech company, basically. We expect this regulation might be the game changer. Nicola already mentioned that, for instance, in the UK, FCA is about thinking to rule whether to consider buy now, pay later a credit product. So far, it's not, given the small amounts and the limited duration. In the States, regulatory thinking to oblige financial institutions to consider buy now, pay later exposure in the credit assessment, in the credit scoring of their clients. So I expect, and in Europe as well, maybe we're still a little bit behind in the process, but I expect the regulation will force even fintech players to apply to the ECB regulation. That what we already observed in Italy, not with buy now, pay later players, but with payment players that were not regulated. They have been forced by our banking authority, to get the email status. So I expect this to happen, and given the regulation, also the way fintech or banks will play in accordance with credit management, being it a factoring, being it securitization process or whatsoever, might be quite alike. But so far, to answer your questions, we see different models, as you said, given that there is no specific regulation. Obviously, banks and consumer finance have already the burden of credit provisioning, and that's why they apply stricter credit rules, which is not the case for fintechs, but we know that fintechs are playing with different KPIs, so we cannot compare the two. I mean, fintechs are investing or burning, the capital of the investors, and they grow more on, market evaluation than on real revenues. But anyhow, I think that regulation will become the game changer.
Okay. So let's see what will happen. Piotr, maybe if you could just comment, I mean, a bit, Nicola answered this question, but if we look on this page with advantages and disadvantages of banks, because majority of the audience today are representatives of banks. The question is, what banks should do now? Let's say, wait or do something. What is, I mean, how do you assess the chances of banks on this market?
I would say we did recently a project with regards to the payment gateway. So we still see a potential to establish, I would say, online acquiring services, especially in Eastern Europe. So we see that not only, I would say, adding BNPL to already rendered acquiring services makes sense, as it was explained by Nicola. Also leveraging on the potential cross-sell to the new clients that are acquired in this way. But I would say establishing this service still makes sense for Eastern Europe, having in mind the convergence that we expect in terms of the spendings in the, I would say, in online channel, in order to get to the similar level as already happening in Western Europe.
Okay. So I would say, let's see how these developments will look. So maybe Nicola,
another, if I can also interrupt you, is what was mentioned before. I would say, especially for brick and mortar acquiring, we observe that not all payment providers are keen to go for this kind of solutions because they don't have expertise in consumer finance, in lending. So they might be looking for the partner that can offer this as add-on service to the offering these capabilities in smart POS. So this is another potential way to access this services, offer this product through merchant channel.
So either as a partnering or providing the own solution,
yes,
a very comprehensive one.
Yes.
Okay. Nicola, maybe if you could comment, because we also together worked on a couple of projects in this area, but I think what is interesting to say is how potentially we could help in such a venture, and what is our role in the BNPL story. So what if you could just provide some examples and give explanation what is typically our role in such projects. Nicola.
Sorry, I realized I muted myself in the meantime. So also what Piotr said, that we did certain feasibility studies around the payment gateway. Of course, also for buy now, pay later, we are able to assess what's the bank's starting point regarding market entry to the business model, and what's the specific addressable potential and the potential business case for entering that market. Regarding the product strategy, we are able to do a more detailed product design. So on the business side, business model, also on the operating model side. So actually how to pull together all the assets that are needed, basically for the buy now, pay later go to market. I mentioned smart POS earlier, the actual buy now, pay later engine, the onboarding app, and so on. So everything that's needed, this would, I would guess, be covered by point 2. Isn't the same in every project, but just for our discussion purposes for today. Further, of course, we are also able to select partners if in many cases these solutions are not built from scratch in-house. We can also look at existing partners which are fitting buy now, pay later requirements. And also what we are able to do is support the conceptualizing and developing, let's say, the customer journey around the MVP, including starting up the implementation with our subsidiary ZB Applied or ZDB Applied. We are also able to support certain parts of actual product development. Usually what happens in such fast go-to-market projects, also in the lending space, is that we sometimes take them on board and are able to also implement the solution that we designed together with you. And last but not least, I'd just like to touch upon a couple of projects. So I think there is also a question or a remark from Jacek that the buy now, pay later is kind of leaving the payment space behind and going beyond payments. This is how we also perceive the projects that we have. Some of them come basically from a payment motivation and from a payment gateway build-up and let's say the e-commerce business building on that. Others come again from a consumer finance point of view, but all of them want to tap into the buy now, pay later buy now, pay later market, either from a merchant point of view, consumer point of view, or finally also in as a service business enabling, if you will, model. And our experience is quite broad here, depending on the entry point of the client. So as I mentioned, I think very early in this talk, we also have experience in supporting non-financial industry acquiring the payment license and then building their own buy now, pay later offering. So detaching themselves from their existing partners, PSD2 license application area, but also, let's say, for all of those institutions with a stronger starting point, developing a fast product and go-to-market strategy for entering that space. And looking forward to a short wrap up then by you, Maciek.
So Nicola, I think the buzzwords here, banking as a service, embedded finance, BNPL, payments, consumer finance, I think they all get very close together. And I think in our projects, I think it would be difficult just not to mention and not to tackle one of these aspects. I'm fully with you. Gentlemen, so just to sum up, thank you very much for your comments. I think especially here in the region, we are experiencing the very beginning of the BNPL story. I think some big players with embedded finance, I mean, they mentioned Allegro, I think they are showing the way how to make it really popular. And as one of the participants mentioned, I think the statistics are reflecting this very rapidly. So the growth is definitely there. And we believe that every bank which is active in the payments or consumer finance area should also be looking into BNPL story, and to assess the potential and its capabilities. As you mentioned, the regulatory topics. This is something which might change this market in the future, but I think the precise direction of the regulatory developments is still being shaped. So it's difficult to predict if this market will be somehow limited or only, I would say, guided towards a certain direction. And I think what Piotr mentioned, this comprehensive approach, this very broad game. So not only about this one product, but about super app or the shopping super app from the client side, or a one-stop solution for the merchant. I think this will be the trends which will really influence this market. Just to close up, in the comments you see also we posted a short questionnaire. So we are trying to make these events, webinars, our meetings better and better. So we very much appreciate your feedback. So if it's possible, just take this 1 up to 2 minutes time just to provide your feedback and your comments. The presentation which we showed today will be distributed during the day today, so don't worry, we will send it out to all participants. And of course, we are also happy to continue the discussion with you on a bilateral basis. So if you are interested in the topic, do not hesitate to reach out to us and discuss this topic. We are really open to share our in-depth experience in this topic, share more insights from the project which we assisted. So looking forward to hearing from you. As you know, we try to do these meetings on a regular basis. The next one is planned for end of March. This will be this time on the private banking topic. You will receive the invitation shortly with the details and the registration link. Gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for sharing your insights today. Thank you to all participants for joining today, and we are looking forward to hearing from you and discussing this very interesting topic in detail in bilateral meetings. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.